in one of C.S. Lewis's Screwtape letters, he has Screwtape, who's a senior devil, trying to train in his young nephew, who's a wormwood, who's a minor devil, or just starting off. And of course, wormwood, like any adolescent, is trying out all sorts of novel ways of winning souls away from God. And Screwtape getting very fed up with wormwood, and he says, listen, he says finally, we've a very tried and tested way of winning souls from God. And that is to create enough noise in the world that no one will be able to hear the voice of God. And wormwood goes off, and it's clear to me that both Screwtape and wormwood, though fictional, have done a great job. We are bombarded with noise, and that noise rises to a crescendo normally at this time of the year, with the consumer frenzy of shopping, and it's just busy, and things get lost. And one of the things I think that has got lost over the years is Advent, the whole liturgical season of Advent. And maybe, just maybe, this year we can reinstate it or let it re-emerge, because we're all going to be locked down and not able to get to a church. Advent has a difficulty about getting itself reinstated because it's very countercultural. It goes against our culture. First of all, it's a time of preparation and waiting. And we don't do waiting very well any longer, you know. We expect if we send an email or send anything, we expect an instant response. If fast is good, faster is better. You know, we've express lanes, express post. There's very little mass. If you're slow, you're sort of associated with being not very bright. So waiting, which is what Advent is about, waiting for the birth of Christ, waiting is not something. So that's the first way it's countercultural. Preparation we're a bit more familiar with. We're preparing for the birth of Christ, preparing for the Saviour of the world. All history changed when that happened. But not only are we waiting for the birth of Christ coming into our world, we're waiting for him to be born in each of us. In each of us. That's the real celebration for me. And Meister Eckhart puts it like this. He says, what does it avail me if I'm celebrating this every year? And I'm paraphrasing him slightly. If it doesn't happen to me, if it doesn't happen in me, that it should happen in each of us is what matters. That we are to become the mother of God, to give birth to divinity in ourselves. That's the real secret we're preparing for, waiting for, and getting ourselves attuned for. So that's the first way it's countercultural, to wait, pray, be open, create space for the birth to occur in us. Secondly, it's countercultural because we're beginning Advent. The beginning of Advent is the beginning of a new liturgical year. The beginning of a new year, and the new year that everybody's familiar with is still a month off. We begin the first Sunday of Advent, it's the end of November. We're beginning the church's new year. So if you take this seriously, then you can get caught with your two calendars. You have one calendar, let's call it the secular calendar, the 1st of January, and then you've got your liturgical calendar. You become a sort of split by these two calendars. So that's another way which we have to make some adjustments if Advent is to get reinstated in our consciousness, which is where it needs to be. It's not just an aesthetic or liturgical experience. It's meant to bring about changes in us. So how can we prepare for this special time? Well, one for me is to try and declutter my life a little bit, to create space. Birth takes space. It takes receptivity. You know, don't let busyness block, choke your receptivity. We've got to be open and create space. That's the first thing. Now, our culture has a really different agenda. They want us to fill every space, get as busy as possible. So this is a fight if we're to get ourselves in order for Christmas, which is what we're trying to do. The church has a whole battery of resources to help us make this adjustment, bring us into a new season. And I'll go through those, and maybe you can apply some of them in your home this year because you won't be in a church for the first Sunday of Advent. The first thing that the church does is it creates in our church we have a big green wreath, and there are 4 candles to mark the 4 Sundays of Advent, and they're different colours. So they're green, evergreen, because Christianity is about evergreen, being full of sap, still green. And it goes on for, holly is often used, and yew. So that's the first thing the church does. It uses a wreath. The second thing it changes is colour. You see, the church, liturgy is about sensuality, about using the senses. So we've created something to look at. The candles are different colours in the wreaths too. The second thing it changes is the green colour, which we've been using for the last couple of months, since Easter in fact. Vestments are green, the colours over the wall hangings are green. They become purple. The vestments are purple, hangings are purple. So again, another sensual thing. Candles are used for light because it's going to be Christ is the light. These are all powerful symbols. And then the most dramatic one for me is the chant changes. The chant changes. We begin Advent with First Vespers on Saturday for the first Sunday of Advent. And when you walk into the church, there's colour, there's a change in atmosphere brought about by that colour. And then the chant starts. And here is an antiphonale. This is a book that monks would have used in the older days. You'd sit back in your pew and it's all in beautifully written, but it's very large print. So the antiphonale is actually a Cistercian one, but at the very beginning of the liturgical year, we get the first thing is the first Sunday of Advent. The first Sunday of Advent, beginning First Vespers for Advent is here. And this sound, I don't know what it is, and I will find out for you. This chant is transformative. It lifts me over the lintel from one time, liturgical time, into a new time, into this celebration of Advent. It changes me. From that moment I'm changed. And the last thing that you find is that the readings all change. Now we're into prophets of expectation, particularly the prophet Isaiah. So we're hearing this forecasting of this coming of the Saviour, Emmanuel, God coming among us. The readings are packed with this expectation. So what can we do to prepare for Advent? To prepare for this birth, that it would be happening in me, the birth of the divine, the birth of the divine. St. Basil puts it, he says, we're creatures, but we're creatures who've got the vocation to become divine, even though we're creatures. And again, to go back to my friend Meister Eckhart, what does it avail me if we're celebrating this if it doesn't happen in me, So that's what Advent is preparing for. What can you do? Well, I suggest that this year, since there's no church celebrations, you could join us for First Vespers at 6 o'clock on that Saturday. It's about 24th, 25th of November, and you'd hear the chant. I'd ask your children to come up with ideas. What ideas? Explain what it's about, come up with ideas. You could build your own Christmas wreath. You could check out the Advent heroes. Who are the Advent heroes? The Advent heroes are John the Baptist. Prepare ye the way of the Lord. Prepare ye the way of the Lord. Get ready. That's what he was saying. Mary, obviously, the other hero, and Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah. You could do some readings. Create some quiet space in your home where it could be set aside. There are special Advent prayers. There are Advent hymns, which are very different from Christmas hymns. I suggested here one year at the carol service, which happens in Advent here, that we sing, Adeste Fideles and Good King Wenceslas, whatever. And I was told, wait a second, they're Christmas carols. There are specifically Advent carols, which you can check about those. There's the Advent calendars. Now, not the Advent calendars which are counting down with giving you chocolates or whatever it is. An Advent calendar, you can create your own. Your children could create your own. And I'm sure you can come up with many more ideas to help to celebrate. Once you know what it's about and what we're trying to do, then I'm sure you'll be more creative than I'd be in this. So I wish you well with this season of Advent and hope that this year maybe Advent can re-emerge as the important beginning of a new year that it is. So God bless, keep safe and keep well.